Have you ever looked into a mirror and felt like something or someone was staring back at you? No, not just your reflection, but something otherworldly? Imagine one evening, you're standing in front of your bathroom mirror, wiping away the day's stress when you see it, a shadow lurking behind you. It's not your own. What would you do? Call it a trick of the light? Or would you be paralyzed by the chilling realization that something far darker than you can comprehend is watching your every move? Tonight's story isn't just a ghost story. It's about confronting something far more terrifying than just the supernatural. It's about confronting the shadows within yourself. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at your reflection the same way again. But before we dive in, let me ask you, have you ever felt like your reflection didn't match how you felt inside? Well, stay with me, and you'll understand exactly why your reflection can be your biggest enemy. It all started with a young woman named Claire. Claire was just like any of us, busy with life, focused on her career, and constantly trying to maintain control. But what she didn't know was that she wasn't in control at all. One evening, Claire had just come home from work, drained and frustrated. Her apartment felt like a maze of cold walls, her mind fogged with thoughts of bills, deadlines, and relationships gone wrong. She stepped into the bathroom and, like anyone would do, looked into the mirror to take a breath and clear her mind. But this time, something was off. As she stared at herself, the shadows around her began to grow. Just a little at first. A flicker. And then, it wasn't her reflection that stood still. It was her own body, the one she was standing in, that seemed to move, just for a moment, out of sync with her. It was subtle, but Claire noticed it. Her reflection smiled back, but she hadn't. It was as if the mirror had a life of its own, and Claire was no longer in control. What would you do in that moment? Would you laugh it off, or would your heart race, knowing something just isn't right? Let's pause here and think. What does this mirror really represent? Is it just a tool, or is it a symbol for something more sinister? For most of us, mirrors are a way to check our appearance. But what if they reflect something deeper? Our fears, our insecurities. Now, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting in the reflection. Every time she passed the bathroom, the mirror seemed to grow darker, as though it were pulling her closer, drawing her into a reality she couldn't control. At first, she told herself it was just the stress, a tired mind. But soon, the whispers started. Soft at first, just a faint murmur from the reflection. Claire was not imagining it. One night, in the midst of her growing unease, she decided to confront it. She stood in front of the mirror, heart racing, determined to prove it was all in her head. But then, the shadow appeared, not in the reflection, but in the room with her. Darker than darkness, it slithered across the floor, circling her as if it were alive. Claire screamed, but her reflection didn't move. It stayed eerily still, smiling. Was it a spirit? A demon? Or something even more terrifying? Something that had been with her all along? What would you do if your worst fears stared back at you through the glass, reminding you of the battles you thought you'd left behind? Before you jump to conclusions, let me tell you, the mirror wasn't just showing Claire what was outside her. It was showing her what was inside her. Her regrets, her insecurities, her failures. Dramatic, heart-pounding background music ramps up. Voiceover filled with urgency and dread. As the shadow grew bolder, Claire realized something that terrified her. This wasn't just a haunted mirror. It was a portal to a darker reality where everything she feared about herself came to life. The longer she stared, the more real it became. Now imagine this. What if the shadow wasn't just some supernatural entity? What if it was yourself? You see, Claire hadn't been facing the truth about who she had become. The shadow in the mirror was a reflection of all her unresolved fears, her guilt, her regret, and it wanted out. What would you do if you knew you were the one holding your own terror captive? hiding it in the shadows. Claire made a desperate decision. She wasn't going to let the mirror control her any longer. She smashed the glass with everything she had. And the moment she did, silence. The shadow disappeared. But the question remains. Did Claire escape the darkness,